So, good morning, everybody. I will now present you with small synthesis of workshop number 1, covering breeding and genetic processes. This workshop aimed at providing us with a bigger picture vision about recent genetic achievements concerning sorghum in Europe and on a global scale, and to allow us to identify solutions to meet the new challenges which we are facing every day. We divided it in 2 sessions. First one about outcomes and more recent developments, and in the others and achievements. All of this is related to fodder sorghum. We want to make to kind of see where we are, and then in the second session we will be providing further examples showing what steps need to be taken in order to implement and reinforce genetic studies and research about sorghum. We will be dealing with phenotypes and genetic breeding, and then we will share some thoughts about what can be done and how we can build a process, a path together in order to carry out a shared initiative about genetic enhancement of sorghum. In the third session, we listened to 2 speakers, Mr. Jordan from Queensland University, who spoke about what he has been doing in his university, and then Mr. Windpassinger. And well, David Jordan, in the first workshop, I told you before, provided us with a great example of a well-thought program which has had great outcomes. It was a pre-breeding program which was carried out in Australia. His workshop was kind of extensive, so I'm wrapping it up. Well, he was able to identify and to narrow down why we have to, to link genetic research with research about cultivation techniques in order to marry genotypes, agricultural practices, and technology. Then farmers have voiced their interest in as for the need to identify the most effective traits, genetic traits, and about the wished performances and how we could obtain them through genetics. So we heard a lot about what they did in Australia, about environment, temperature management, and then he showed us the different opportunities as for new breeding methods such as genomic selection, which is needed to enhance effectiveness of genetic research. Then he focused on the private sector and the public sector, and he focused on breeding. Much needed breeding to enhance frost resistance. He also showed his works on breeding aiming at drought resistance. And what he did with his team, well, it allowed us to launch ourselves into a number of trials which have been carried out under controlled conditions, but also on in-field trials which aimed at assessing the genetic resistance of juvenile plants, and also the etherosis level which could appear. conclusion was that as we're talking about a quantitative character, and there's a lot of heterosis, mainstream methods based on combination, well, can provide great outcomes in order to better develop this trait. What was also highlighted is that standability in sorghum, in fodder sorghum and biomass sorghum, and standability enhancement is a key challenge for some breeds, some species which have standability problems. So this will need additional studies. Then we had two more speakers, Mr. Emiliano and Mr. Shafaz, who they also showed us an example of fodder sorghum enhancement program, and they also talked about European laws and what happens above 48 degrees of latitude. It was highlighted that we had to obtain more adaptable plants because days are shorter and temperatures are lower, and this applies both to juvenile plants but also to the flowering phase. Nights are cold down there. He showed through the breeding action that great results could be obtained on specific traits in terms of biomass output in fodder sorghum. Also, plant height and overall yield have been improved, and also the digestibility. In the very last slide we had a look at from Mr. Shafaz from a local. He has been working with university from his city, and he also worked on frost resistance, but during the flowering part. Northern Europe means low temperatures, and it can be cold even during July. He highlighted how much genetic diversity we have as for this trait, and we're talking natural diversity. We could then narrow down a couple of great breeds, which were great for frost resistance. So they identified a number of barriers, protections, how to say, which could improve the plant's lifespan through a series of markers. We try to provide examples. So in Europe, there has been some great advancements in genetic improvement for fodder and grain sorghum. This has proven itself to be a true success. I mean, we're talking considerable achievements. And now sorghum cultivation can rely on better resistance to low temperatures, but still many challenges are ahead of us in the future, and we identified the most one of these challenges for which some idiotypes for grain sorghum should be identified, which would allow it to be grown better in some regions, especially in low temperature regions. I mean, we're talking about extreme conditions. So we had to improve pre-flowering drought resistance and also the standability.
Enfin, la génétique ne peut pas résoudre tous les problèmes toute seule, donc il faut toujours avoir
But
en
still,
tête qu'il faut
genetics
avoir une approche
cannot do miracles.
donc génétique,
We
abordant la
have to keep
diversité
in mind that we need an organic approach
des systèmes de culture.
involving genetics, but also involving the improvement of cultural techniques in the different cultivation areas. Then we identify new breeding methods, breeding tools, allowing for better effectiveness in this improvement process. Then a first debate has been held, focusing on narrowing down, focusing on identifying the needs in terms of, performance, yield, expected improvements. During this roundtable, we narrowed down a couple of challenges, aims, and priority improvements, aiming at improving production consistency and adaptability. So standability, water stress, drought resistance during the flowering phase. So priorities change according to cultivation areas. Frost resistance is not only important for cultivations in Northern Europe, but also for southern areas, which would allow for earlier sowing, like we did with maize. So we're talking about an overall improvement of the sorghum process. And also, we also try to improve resistance to rain and to heavy rain, and also resistance to drought, especially in middle phase of the production. We try to obtain a better drying processes. Which can
la régularité de production du sorgho.
We also listen to the farms' wishes. I mean, we listen to what they would like to see, what production improvement they would like to see in the future. And we also dealt with pests, aside from phytopathologies, or disorders, and pests, which come from Africa and might swarm in Europe and be a source of issues. It is very important to have a low wet rate during harvesting. It applies to the plant, to the grains carried by the plant. And we also talked about the size consistency in grains, which is needed to improve yield. And we also talked about fodder or forage quality for farming purposes and compound feed. We know very well that many representatives from many European countries are here today, be it, agronomists or breeders. I'm aware that everybody couldn't be here today, didn't make it here today, but still I think it's kind of worthy to voice these requests on a European level in order to obtain more extensive figures and data and to reach better knowledge.